moment for coordinated chaos. Today we're going to be recapping a little bit of week 4 in the NFL. We're going to go through a segment that I'm calling Relax and then Panic. And then at the very end, I'm just going to give some shout outs to some big wins over the weekend with some of the teams in the league. So let's get right into this whole thing. I'm going to go through the teams where people may want to panic, but I'm going to give them that famous 5-letter word that Aaron Rodgers uttered one year in the NFL whenever the Packers got out to a bad start. And he said, RELAX, relax. That's what we're going to have to do with these, I believe, 5 teams I have listed here. Then I'm going to give you a list of the panic teams because I think they're going in the wrong direction, even if they did happen to win this past week. So we're going to start with the relax teams. We're going to have to relax people about the Kansas City Chiefs. I think this was just, if anything, just shows you how important all 3 phases of a football team are, offense, defense, and then special teams. In this game, I would say the offense struggled a little bit for the Chiefs. They're still figuring out how to really operate that offense without, the explosive element of Tyreek Hill. But I think they're doing a pretty good job of it, and I think they're going to get better as the season goes on. But they did not have a great offensive showing. Pat Mahomes looked a little bit off in this game. The Colts are coming off of being basically 0-2. I know they tied in the first week, but whatever. They basically had their backs against the wall, and they were playing tough. They were playing physical. Stephon Gilmore made a lot of very good plays in this game, and it came down to just a few plays in the game that decided the ending of it there, and a lot of it had to do with Kansas City's kicking game. Obviously, Harrison Butker is out with an ankle, has been since basically week 1. So they brought in a kicker, and I don't even know his name, honestly, and he just couldn't come through in the clutch for the Kansas City Chiefs. So ultimately, they lose that game based off of, I think, a couple missed kicks by him. So I think we have to just relax. If you're in Chiefs Kingdom right now, it's going to be fine. They'll get the things fixed that they need to. The kicking game should be fixed once Harrison Butker comes back. So I think we just need to relax on that one. Next team people need to relax on is the Bills. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. They still, in my opinion, look like the better team between the two of them, the Dolphins, in this game. The problem was it is so very tough to go early season into Miami and win. Especially like if it's in September or October, because of the fact that it's still very close to 90 degrees. I think it was 90 degrees at least in that game on Sunday. And the way they built that stadium in Miami, they basically have the sun beating down on the opposing team's bench the entire game, and it covers basically half the field, even as, that 4 o'clock hour kind of turns. So the Bills were exhausted. They had a lot of issues with hydration and cramping and things like that. So they were just really, really tired at the end of that game. And I think in any other regular game script, the Bills end up pulling that one out because Miami wanted to almost choke that one away with the whole backing up into the end zone, the guy punting the ball into the other guy's butt and going back for a safety. That was a super wild ending, but Bills pulled it off. You got to give them credit. They're one of the only 2 undefeated teams in the league so far, so they're finding ways to win ball games that they usually wouldn't have in the past, and so that is a very good and promising thing for the Dolphins moving forward. The next team we got to relax on, I think, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The defense is still good. They're still playing well. I know they lost to the Packers. It was a tough, hard-fought game. Both teams played pretty poorly, honestly. It was like a juggernaut. Just matchup, I don't know. The Packers barely did enough to get it done. Aaron Rodgers is still trying to figure out, the whole passing situation with them. They're having to lean on the run game a whole lot. But the Buccaneers defense is still solid. Tampa Bay was without a ton of weapons in this game. Mike Evans had the 1-game suspension because of the whole ordeal with Marcus Lattimore. So they were without him. They were without Julio in this game. They were without Chris Godwin in this game. So they're running out with Russell Gage, Rashad Perriman, Scotty Miller. They just signed Cole Beasley. So they had a ragtag group of receivers trying to get it done for the Bucs. And I think as the season goes on, as people get more healthy, Mike Evans is going to be back in this next game. They're just going to be better and better as the season goes along. Hopefully their O-line, like I said, gels. because of some of the newer additions because of some injuries. But I think the Bucs are going to be fine. We got to relax on them for the time being. Next team to relax on, even though they looked horrible, it was one of the worst games I've ever seen in my entire life on Sunday Night Football. That was the 49ers. The 49ers, I think, are going to be perfectly fine. Just like in the case with Tampa Bay, the 49ers defense is probably a top 3 unit in all of football right now. They're showing why. Fred Warner's all over the place. Kerry Hyder's killing it. You got Nick Bosa. He's unbelievable. They got playmakers on the defensive side of the ball that can get stuff done. And I think the offense will round into form. Jimmy G didn't have he had probably 10% of the training camp snaps that he would have normally because of the fact that he basically thought he was going to get traded, and so did everybody else in the world before 1 week before the season even started. So he finally got some training camp reps in at the very, very tail end of training camp. So he is still trying to get his thing together, but I will point out that you do see some things, even though he is rusty, hadn't played a lot, you do see some reasons why the 49ers were looking to go in another direction with Trey Lance because, man, Jimmy G can make some bad decisions. He can make some bad throws, but more often than not, he's going to make the right play. And I think that offense will round into form kind of like they did last year, and they will be perfectly fine because of how good that defense is, how good the run game is because of Shanahan. They have weapons with Debo and Ayuk and George Kittle as long as he can stay healthy. So I think ultimately they will be fine. But Jimmy G is a slight bit of a concern going forward, but I think he'll be fine going forward as well. Okay, so the next team that is on the relax side of this is the Chargers. They got mollywopped by the Jaguars. I think this was more of a situation where they came into the game thinking, oh, it's the Jaguars. They lost to the Commanders or whatever and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I think they thought it was going to be the age-old, it's the Jaguars, we can go in here and get this win. It's a home game. We'll be okay. And the Jaguars came in and punched them directly in the mouth. And the Jaguars are for real this year. Their defense is really good. You can't sleep on them. The offense is getting into form right now as Trevor Lawrence is playing as good as he's ever played. I mean, he's only been in the league 1 year other than this year. But it's just that last game against the Chargers, it was 100% the best game he's ever played. They have some decent weapons. Nobody is exactly special in that Jacksonville, weapon group there. They got James Robinson playing well, coming off the Achilles, which is super impressive. Travis Etienne is a solid back, third down back. And then they had the Zay Jones of the world. They have Christian Kirk, who they signed. Everybody was complaining about how much money they gave him, but he has showed out so far this season. If you have him in fantasy, you're a very happy camper. But yeah, Jaguars are better than people expected. Chargers, I don't think were ready for it. And they have Justin Herbert with the, fractured rib cartilage thing going on. I don't think he probably was stressing himself as much as he would normally with him being 100%. Keenan Allen's still out. Hopefully he's going to come back this next coming week. But I think we have to relax on them just for the second because I think that defense is still pretty decent. They did, get caught, with their pants down essentially with the Jaguars. But I think they'll be fine going forward. All right, let's move into if you are a fan of these teams, you got to start hitting the panic button a little bit here. Okay, so first team that I would be panicking about would be the Steelers. The Steelers defense is good, still good, but if they start losing more players on the level of TJ Watt, if they lose a Mika Fitzpatrick, which I think he's a little banged up right now too, the defense can dwindle, and that offense is not good enough to keep up right now with Mitch Trubisky at the helm. I think it is time to put Kenny Pickett in. Just do it. Just rip the Band-Aid off, throw him in there. I know the O-line is still rough, but I think he's athletic enough to kind of get out of the pocket, kind of like how Mitch Trubisky's done the first few weeks. So I think you just got to throw him into the fire and let him figure it out. They still have weapons, so it's not like he can't get the ball out of his hands into some playmakers like Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson, Claypool, George Pickens. George Pickens made an incredible grab against the Browns on Thursday Night Football. That was wild. But yeah, I think And really, the only reason you got to hit the panic button is because of the QB situation for the Steelers and the fact there's a little bit of injury, happening with the defense. So that's it for the Steelers. I think that's the only reason you panic is QB situation. You put Kenny Pickett in there, and I think you're good. Next team, you got to hit the panic button. Even though they did win this week, the Carolina Panthers, they beat the Saints this week with a banged-up Jameis Winston. The only reason I say you hit the panic button with the Panthers at this point is because I just don't trust Matt Rule. I don't like Ben McAdoo. I don't think he's a very good offensive mind. He is the offensive coordinator for them, and it looks like the same type of offense he's ran his entire tenure as a coach in the NFL when he was with the Giants and whoever else he was with, I think, right after that. I just don't like Ben McAdoo. I don't think he's creative. I think he's very, very simple, and the offense looks very stale. I mean, they're not putting the ball into their playmakers' hands like Christian McCaffrey should be touching the ball way more than he does at this point in time because you just don't have the weapons right now. You're not getting the ball to DJ Moore enough. Baker looks a little skittish in the pocket. He looks like he's pump faking a ton before actually making a decision to throw the ball. So that doesn't bode well for the offense. I really appreciate the Panthers beating the Saints, though, because the Eagles do own the Saints' first-round draft pick this year. So huge shout out to them for winning. I still think you're hitting the panic button, though. So next team, Patriots. Got to hit the panic button because of how bad that offense has looked. It was keeping up a little bit with the Ravens this past week, but the problem is Mac Jones just got hurt. High ankle sprain. We have no idea how long he's going to be out for. And that's a big deal because I don't think Brian Hoyer is going to come in and do anything better. The run game of the Patriots is the only thing that's really keeping them afloat right now. Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson are both studs. They're getting it done right now. But once again, I still can't trust the offensive brain trust of Joe Judge and Matt Patricia. I don't see how that's working. I don't think the passing game has gotten any better at all. And then Mac Jones goes down. Patriots defense is still pretty solid because of just how good Belichick is with that whole scheme. But you got to hit the panic button because if they don't have Mac Jones for the foreseeable future, they can lose a lot of games here, and the season just could be over, essentially. Next team to hit the panic button. They are 0-3. This is the Las Vegas Raiders. The problem with the Raiders, and this is something that I stressed in the offseason, some bias on my side came into this, but ultimately I think I will be proven correct in this notion that I had in the offseason when all of this stuff was going down. I was kind of upset at the whole Davante Adams leaving Green Bay thing. People were, saying it was Aaron Rodgers' fault because he took too much of the cap space, blah, 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 blah. I think it was just one of those situations where Davante Adams just saw an opportunity, wanted to maybe live somewhere else. You get the bag that he always deserved as a top wide receiver in the NFL. So, of course, he basically almost forced a trade to Las Vegas. But in my estimation, in the offseason, my opinion of it was, I think this is a horrible idea for the Las Vegas Raiders based on the fact that I don't think they were ready. I don't think they were ready to actually take that next step. They were not one wide receiver away from making that leap and being at the top of the AFC West because the Chiefs and the Chargers are going to be the top two teams in that division for this foreseeable future. So I just thought it was a waste of draft capital. I thought it was a waste of time. I thought really Josh McDaniels, it would have been smart for him to almost break it down and go into rebuild mode because then that would give him more time to, kind of say, look, I'm building something here and not put so much pressure on himself to try to compete year one as the new head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Because with the additions and stuff like that, there was too much expectation on the Raiders to actually do something this season, and they've gotten out to a very poor start. And I think it's just biting them in the rear that they made these decisions, and it's just not going in their favor. Next team, you got to hit the panic button. They won. Another team that won, but I'm still not, gung-ho about their future. That's the Broncos. Kind of like the Raiders did. They spent a ton of draft capital. They sacrificed a lot to get Russell Wilson in there. They paid him a ton of money, just like Devontae Adams got, and they're not really getting anything in return right now. Russell Wilson has looked pretty cooked. It's unfortunate. I like Russell Wilson, but it has not looked very good. He does not have the chemistry with his receivers. He's gaining a little bit of chemistry with, it looks like, Cortland Sutton at this point. Nathaniel Hackett has looked very, very questionable as that new head coach in Denver. So things are just not clicking right now. They barely escaped that game against the 49ers. I think that had more to do with the 49ers offense not being in sync because of Jimmy G being inserted so abruptly into that starting lineup. So I think you have to hit the panic button on the Broncos right now because it's just the offense. The defense seems pretty decent. They're probably league average, maybe a little bit better than league average, but I don't see them making a lot of noise, kind of like the Raiders. They did all of this preseason hype with bringing in a player like the Raiders did, and it's just not going to pay off because I think the Chargers and the Chiefs are still going to be the top two teams in that AFC West. It's just a tough division, and so you got to play smart in that whole scenario. Next team you got to hit the panic button is the Giants. I know they just lost their first game of the season. They are 2-1, but man, they have not looked good in any of the games. They lost to a Cooper Rush-led Cowboys team that did not even play well in the game. Daniel Jones is running for his life again, like every other season he's played for the Giants. That O-line stinks. They had like some crazy number, like over 30 pressures or something like that on Monday Night Football. Micah Parsons was getting after him. DeMarcus Lawrence had multiple sacks. It was just not good, and it's not really going to get much easier than a Cooper Rush-led Cowboys, even though that defense for the Cowboys is very, very solid at this point in time. I mean, you still have to play the Eagles twice in the division, whose defense looks very, very good, and that pass rush can get after Daniel Jones, especially with a lackluster group of O-linemen. The weapons are very iffy for the Giants right now. It looks like your best receiver is literally Richie James, and most people don't even know who that is. Kenny Golladay, bust. Just a huge disappointment. He's getting paid so much money to do essentially nothing. Sterling Shepard gets hurt in the game, tears his ACL. You need to remove turf from every NFL stadium in America or whatever. Like, literally, turf needs to go extinct in the NFL. Everything needs to be grass because this dude was just running. He was just jogging and he gets caught on the turf. Turf monster got him. ACL gone. Hurt for the whole season. So that's really unfortunate. He was playing well. He was their best receiver for sure. And then their best weapon is obviously Saquon Barkley, but you can only do so much with a running back this day and age in the NFL. So I just don't see it happening for the Giants. Their defense is just okay. I think Wink Martindale is a good defensive coordinator, but I don't know if they have the talent to get it completely done, especially in what looks to be a decently tough division in the NFC East this year. So panic button for the Giants, even though they're above 500. Next team and last team on the panic button is the Chicago Bears. They are also 2-1, very surprisingly, but they've gotten it done. My biggest concern right now for the Bears is the fact that in the last 3 games, which they've only played 3 games this year, is literally the fact that Justin Fields has not thrown for more than 20 passing attempts the entire season. I think the cap is 17. That's the most he's thrown passes in a game this season, which tells you a whole lot. I don't think Matt Eberflus, the new head coach of the Bears, trusts Justin Fields to make the throws necessary. I don't think he trusts him at all based on the fact that, you can't win consistently. That's not sustainable in this day and age in the NFL to throw that least of times and still win. The running game is what's keeping them afloat right now with David Montgomery. He just got banged up and hurt, so Khalil Herbert inserts into that, and he was very, very good in substitution for David Montgomery last year, so hopefully he'll be able to pick up where he left off last year and be very good again. The Bears defense is very hit or miss. Roquan Smith made some very big plays in that game to kind of put that one away against the Texans. the Texans are the Texans right now. They're just not very good. Davis Mills is disappointed. But yeah, so the Bears, even though, like I said, like the Giants, they're above 500 on the season so far, I don't see it getting much better. This is probably the peak of, their powers right now. Justin Fields, better hope to gain some more trust from that coaching staff, because if he continues this, then that might, he just may not be their franchise guy, and that's disappointing for that fan base, and that's why you got to hit the panic button a little bit this early in the season, because if it continues in this fashion, it's not going to be good for the Bears and their fan base once again, because they are just yearning for a franchise QB to come in there. So that's it for relax and the panic button segment here. The next thing is I'm just going to give out some shout outs to some big wins through the weekend, some teams making some noise. It was a very, very weird week 3, I believe. There's just some surprising, endings and stuff like that, surprising, box scores. But to start out, a big win, first game of the week, Thursday Night Football, the Browns beat the Steelers. The Browns are impressing because they're just doing what they have to do right now to stay afloat in that division until they can potentially get Deshaun Watson back. That's going to be later in the season. Obviously, he's on that 11-game suspension. But Jacoby Brissett is doing what he has to do. He's taking what the defense is giving him. He is throwing to his playmakers, David Njoku, Amari Cooper. He's getting the ball out of his hands to Kareem Hunt. They're running the rock very well with both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb looks like the best running back in football again. The O-line for the Browns is really, really competitive, very good. The defense for the Browns is pretty solid as long as Myles Garrett is healthy. He apparently just got into a car accident, so we're hoping he recovers. Hopefully there's nothing, crazy going on with the injury or any kind of injury he may have sustained in that car wreck. But the Browns defense looks pretty solid, and they're doing what they have to do to stay competitive until Deshaun Watson gets back. So that's a huge win on Thursday night. So, if they can keep being competitive and Deshaun Watson comes back and just is like 20% better than what Jacoby Brissett is, they could be a pretty mean team going forward, maybe making some playoff noise. I would not be shocked by that at all, and I thought they were going to be terrible this year. I thought Jacoby Brissett was just going to be very average. He pretty much is being average, but he's just doing what he has to do to get it done right now. The next team, big win, Dolphins. Even though I did say I think the Bills looked like the better team Sunday against the Dolphins found a way to win. In past years, they probably would have found a way to lose this game. So it's progression in the right direction for the Dolphins. Tua, I don't know how he did it. I don't know if it looks like the NFL is investigating, but this man got knocked on his rear right at the end of the first half and hit his head on the turf and got up woozy and basically fell into another teammate's arms, and then came back in the second half, somehow cleared concussion protocol. I don't know how that happened. They diagnosed it as a back injury, which I think is BS, but he came back and looked perfectly fine. It was really wild, and he played well in the second half to get them the W secured. So they're playing well. That offense is crazy explosive. They didn't even play that well offensively and still got it done against the Bills, which is a very good defense, even though they were lacking some players on defense. Micah Hyde goes on IR for pretty much the entire rest of the season, it looks like, with a neck injury. Jordan Poyer did not play in this game. So the Bills' secondary was banged up, but the Dolphins took advantage of what they had to, and they got it done. So shout out to the Dolphins for another big win, 3-0, along with my Philadelphia Eagles, which I'll get to in a little bit here. Next team with a big win, the Titans. They look like the Titans again. Looks like Ryan Tannehill is getting a little bit more chemistry with that receiving core. Derrick Henry looked like Derrick Henry again. He looked like the king, and he was running all over the place. They were actually throwing him the ball more, which I thought was a very good sign. Even though he's not like the best pass catcher in the league, it's just when he gets the ball and he has space and a head full of steam, people just get out of the way. They don't want to tackle that. So Derrick Henry needs to be more involved in the passing game, even though he's not the best at it. But they need to give him the rock more and let him just pile through people and tire out the defense until the fourth quarter, which he can then rip some big, long runs, which is what he usually does. The Titans' defense is pretty solid again. So I think the Titans can eke their way back into this division because I don't think the Colts are very good still, and because I don't really believe in how they played Sunday against the Chiefs. But it looks like Jacksonville's probably the best team in that division right now. But I think this Titans can come back and make it an interesting division. The next team, we do have the Eagles. 3-0 along with the Dolphins, the only two remaining. The Eagles look good again. They came out hot, destroyed Carson Wentz. The defense got after him. They sacked him 9 times in the game. They pressured him a ton more. He looked like the old Carson Wentz, not like the Carson Wentz of the first 2 weeks for the Commanders, who was very good and bad at the same time. He made some Wentz-like decisions in the first 2 weeks, but this was a classic Carson Wentz, horrible pocket presence, awareness game for him as the Eagles just pinned their ears back and said, we're going to go get Carson, and he holds the ball way too long, so we're going to start swatting at that ball as soon as he's about to load up to throw the football. And the Eagles got some big turnovers because of it, and the Eagles' offense just rolled. Devontae Smith had an incredible game. He had 169 yards and a touchdown. He had one leaping grab over 2 guys right at the goal line, and then he had a goal line fade for a touchdown. Just mossed 3 people in 1 minute span in a football game to end the half there. Eagles went up in the half 24-0. It was pretty much over after that. I think the Eagles, like the last Monday Night Football game against the Vikings, I think in the second half, they just are kind of cruising right now. And I would say it's a bit of a concern that they haven't scored any points in the second half the last 2 weeks. But I think it's more of a product of, I don't think Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen in that offense want to continue to run plays that they like going forward because they don't want to put that on film for people to see. So I think they're just running some very, very vanilla offenses in the second half because they're up so big and they know they can just get the W and get out of there. So defense is working well for the Eagles. Offense is operating at a high level. Jalen Hurts making very, very good throws, very good decisions. Has 1 interception on the season, which was last week on a tipped pass on a screen pass, so I don't even put that on him. He's looking like a stud. He is an early favorite for MVP at this point, along with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, who got a huge win as well. Lamar's doing it all right now. But Eagles look good. Next game, Packers, big win. I think this was a step in the right direction for the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. Even though it was an ugly win, I think in the past, a lot of the times, the Packers were getting into these ugly games and losing them at the end, but they actually pulled this one out. So shout out to the Packers for clamping down, winning it ugly, playing through the run game, playing through Aaron Rodgers just being clutch and making big throws when he has to. Romeo Doubs has stepped up as it looks like a pretty solid receiver for them. So as long as he progresses and Aaron Rodgers gets more chemistry with these receivers, I think going forward they're going to be okay. Defense is still pretty good for the Packers, so we'll see going forward how that progresses, but I think this is a big step in the right direction for the Packers as a team. Next game and last game, shout out to the Cowboys once again. I hate saying it, but man, they're getting it done with Cooper Rush, and that is a sentence I didn't think I would say at all this season. It's wild that he's just not bad at all. He's actually a very competent quarterback in the league. And so they're doing what they have to do to get the wins. The Bengals, the fact that he beat them was a huge deal because coming into the season, you look at the schedule and say, Tampa Bay and then Cincinnati back-to-back on the schedule. That's 2 losses, even with Dak. And they were able to squeak a win out with Cooper Rush and then do it again on Monday Night Football against the Giants. The Giants just, I think, were frauds. I think it was exposed in that game that when it comes down to it, they're still not a very good team. But the Cowboys are keeping up in the NFC East with Cooper Rush at the helm right now, waiting for Dak Prescott to get back. And when he does, that team could actually be pretty formidable, especially with the addition of Michael Gallup coming back off the ACL. That whole team getting more and more healthy. They have some, pretty key guys out on the defense like Jaron Kearse. He's going to be coming back pretty soon. So that team could round into form and really compete with the Eagles in the NFC East. So that's pretty much all I have for today. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Follow us on all the socials. We're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, pretty much everything, Twitter. But yeah, shout out to Weston once again for editing this. I appreciate it, and we will see you guys next week. Peace.